VenomousStare, this week in fantasy, week 2 preview, we're going to be talking about what happened in week 1 of the NFL 2022 season, and then we're going to talk about this week's matchups, and this is going to be a very concise, sharp episode. So, we had me losing to JP right out the gate. This was one of those games that was pretty much determined by the Thursday game, which is always brutal. The crux of the issue here, it was a opening day Rams versus Bills game that turned out to be deeply disappointing. It was one of those games where both teams looked really sloppy, which you saw a lot in week 1 of the NFL season. I wasn't a big fan of that. And overall, Cam Akers was slated to be the starter and got like 6 touches, 0 fantasy points. So that was a repugnant disgrace. And in general, that game of Buffalo versus the Rams is sort of a genesis of why I don't like week 1 of the NFL season. I find that so often the teams are really sloppy. And even in games that seem close and have a lot of lead changes, that they're slop fest. It's very rare for there to be a lot of offensive efficiency and drives that are very concise and crisp. You see a lot of slop. Frankly, it looks like a preseason game a lot of the time, which makes sense because coaches don't want to really play their starters in the preseason. So, was disappointed with that opening day, and the Rams just looked fucking atrocious. And Buffalo really didn't put up as many points as they could have, frankly. Najee Harris played a really jokish game against the Bengals, where Joe Burrow just looked fucking horrible. But Najee is looking like he is going to struggle a bit this year unless he finds the end zone. Pittsburgh is just fucking terrible. We've heard Mike Tomlin slurped endlessly. I mean, this guy just gets fucking infinite credit. And for a guy like Mike Tomlin to have Big Ben his whole career, it's going to become very obvious very quickly that Big Ben carried Mike Tomlin through his entire career. So I'm just sort of worried about Najee getting enough touches since they're always going to be playing from behind. Stephon Diggs looked great, and the Bills do look efficient. I think if you have pieces of the Bills offense, those are going to be pieces with very high floors. They're not going to have a lot of terrible weeks. Like Diggs got targeted so many times in so many high percentage plays that if you were his fantasy owner, especially in PPR, you were just loving that. As far as the Seattle-Denver game, it was an atrocity. Every offseason you have a team that makes a lot of moves or shakes it up a lot, and they have legions of fans and NFL viewers waiting to suck them off deep. And they're called flavor of the month teams. The Broncos are an example of this. Miami was an example of this. The thing is Miami was average already, so Miami added to an average team, making them like a good team, right? Well, Denver wasn't any good. People talk about their defense, and certainly it's above average, but I don't think it's a world-beating defense, especially with Von Miller now in Buffalo. And Russell Wilson has been on the decline, a fact that people just sort of pretend doesn't exist. He's sort of been overrated his whole career, frankly. So for Denver to go out and lose their opening game versus a repugnant Seahawks team that everyone picked to finish last, and is led by Geno Smith really says a lot. Some people need to pump the brakes on some of these flavor of the month teams. I think the Dolphins will be good and they'll make the playoffs, but one flashy offseason does not a playoff team make. Speaking of not being a playoff team, if we flip it over here to ayahuasca, it's sad when good Christian boys falter. And for Weston, I think 52 points really does say it all. For a guy that can't even enjoy a beer to be named ayahuasca, I mean, come on, Weston. Jackson takes the dub. The Lilly decimating clap four, led by 44 Patrick Mahomes performance. The Chiefs embarrassed Arizona. If you were one of these people who thought the Chiefs were going to fall off because other people in their division made some flashy signings and they lost Tyreek, give me a break. Andy Reid, still a top tier coach. Mahomes, still top tier with a lot of weapons. The defense is fine. It was never going to be bad, just like it was never going to be God tier. The Chiefs are probably going to win 13 games this season. So don't believe everything you hear on talk radio from a boring producer who just wanted to make up NFL segments to fill airtime. Here we see Ryan losing, and the takeaway from this is, as predicted, the Cowboys are going to be fucking atrocious. They're going to be a repugnant disgrace. And with two linemen going down and Dak, they're done. And Zeke and Pollard have essentially no value. Bet all the Cowboys unders. I hope you were smart enough to bet the Cowboys win-loss under in the preseason. And if you're a fantasy owner, especially if you're a guy that reached for CeeDee Lamb like I was considering doing, you're up shit creek. Because at least, like, Zeke and Pollard are still going to combine for like 20 looks in the offense, right? So, it's an offense that's going to be doing a lot of three and outing. It's an offense with probably a bottom 7 in the NFL offensive line, led by Cooper Rush, who's worse than Chad Henne. And the Cowboys are just in for it. It's almost not even going to be fun to watch them lose. And I said this a year ago when Dak tore his leg up. I said, it's actually sad that Dak hurt his leg, even if you hate the Cowboys. And you might be saying to yourself, well, why is that? This seems sort of absurd. No, the reason is because the Cowboys are going to eat shit and lose and make a fool of themselves, even if they have Dak. And I was talking to a plethora of Cowboy fans this offseason, and I was hearing the same insipid refrain, the same fucking nonsense from these morons. Oh, well, Dak got hurt. Like, dot, dot, dot. As though that's why they lost. Like, you gotta think, some of these fucking Cowboy fans don't even watch the game. It's insane. But that just blew my mind to hear, because you see the Cowboys be horrific with Dak in. A lineman goes down, and then the game's already lost, and then Dak gets hurt in garbage time trying to rack up his signature, those garbage time yards. People are like, oh yeah, well, Dak got hurt, Almost implying we were Super Bowl bound if Dak didn't get hurt. Shut up. Just disgusting. As far as disgusting goes, Cam putting up 100. Remember, for those fantasy newbies, Cam is at his best at the beginning of the year because there's no bye weeks. I think that my record on opening day is losing. I'm almost certain of that. And I would definitely go out on a limb and say that Cameron's opening day record is better than his average record. So he puts up 98 here. But Ryan's up shit creek with the running back situation. This is really not the spot you want to be in. And I said his running backs were his weakness in the preseason. And you really compound that issue whenever the running back team that you're stacked on goes to shit. So he really needs to make a trade for running back depth. Seagouch and Spencer had a classic shootout. Came down to Monday Night Football, and Seagouch needed Williams to punch it in. He had a goal line fumble that really hurt the Gouch, but of course, Christian and Spencer, two guys expected to do very well, two good owners, and someone had to win. Kyler Murray putting up 24 despite looking like complete horseshit. I think the Cardinals will recover. Yes, they are sort of a gimmick team. Yes, they are sort of overrated. And no, they won't make a deep playoff run, but they'll have fantasy value. So Spencer takes it down. And then AB taking down Aaron. And AB got a lot of flack, obviously, last year. He managed very aggressively and not very well. He drafted guys with blown out knees. So he was really one of these owners who was looking to make a statement. And he had Dak joke and still won, which is impressive. Because, like I said, even though Dak played into the third quarter, didn't even have 5 fantasy points. Aaron Jones, a guy I think he reached for, only got him 8. Josh Jacobs, a guy that I think was really overrated going into this draft, queefed out 7. Tyler Lockett, a guy I love in the past but hasn't been shit recently. But you look really where he made his bones. The Kareem Hunt touchdowns, which I don't know why Kareem Hunt was going so late in drafts. Loved him. And Travis Kelce, who's a legitimate hard carry player looking to get even more points after Tyreek left. So, love this win for Handsome AB, who's off to a good start. So, let's briefly talk about next week, because if you look in the bottom right, the games are sort of starting. But I wanted to get this video out. Better late than never. And I'm just going to talk about this week's matchups. So, I like the Lions against the Commanders. Love Dan Campbell. They look really good against Philly. It was sort of a shootout, but I just am really pulling for the Lions this year, and the Commanders aren't any good, so I expect the Lions to take that down. Pats and Steelers. Pats looked terrible last week, but Belichick's the best coach in the league, and the Steelers are going to be shit this year. Pats take that one easy. And as far as fantasy value goes, I'm concerned about every Steelers piece. Colts and Jags. The Colts threw up on themselves and didn't deserve to win last week. They got a tie. The Jags don't look good. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's never going to grow up. I'm fading the Jags this year, even if you don't have any expectations for them. The Jets and Browns, two teams that deserve to lose every week pretty much. The Browns are less bad. I love the fantasy value of Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb also very good. It looks like they're just going to run it for all their offense. Bucks and Saints. The Bucks look pretty good, as well as the Saints. This should be a pretty good game, although if the Saints over-under for season wins and losses was 11.5, I'll take the under. Giants and Panthers, if you're betting, earlier today the line was +2 Giants. Like the Giants were favorites, and I see the lines move 3 points. Now the Panthers are favorites, which is sort of funny. But I don't believe in the Giants at all, even with the Cowboys being horrific. They're not going to challenge for the division. Baker Mayfield looks sort of shit against his old team. Wasn't happy about that, but I got the Panthers winning that game. That's a must game at week 2. Dolphins and Ravens, that should be great. One of the games I'm most excited for. The Dolphins proved that they're going to have fantasy value this year. They're not going to be a complete disgrace, which no one really thought they would be, but how healthy can Lamar Jackson stay? That's always the question for the Ravens. Falcons and Rams, both teams looked not that good. The Falcons sort of made it close, but obviously the Rams are going to destroy them. Cooper Kupp, tremendous amount of fantasy value, and you're really looking at the backfield there, because Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, who the hell knows who's going to get the touches there? That's a fucking nightmare, and even if you have them both, it fucking sucks. So that's a kick in the fucking teeth. Seahawks and Niners should be a fucking shit stomp. The Niners have terrible coaching, about like the Chargers, who disgraced themselves on Thursday night. I really can't stand these teams who either take retarded, absurd risks all the time, like the Chargers and Staley, who plays like a dime a dozen coin flipping dipshit on Madden, and teams like the Niners, who in perfect weather want to play a 7-point first quarter lead like it's insurmountable. It's like, get Kyle Shanahan the fuck out of here. Bengals and Cowboys. The Bengals are a touchdown favorite. I would fucking even bet that. The Cowboys are going to get fucking monster moded. It's going to take like a few weeks of just getting absolutely obliterated for Cowboy fans to sort of like stop pretending that this is going to be a playoff year. They really are that delusional. And it all comes down to the offensive line. Don't let any idiot Cowboy fan tell you it's because Dak Joke got hurt. Texans and Broncos, borderline unwatchable. The Texans suck floppy and are a disgrace. Broncos overrated. I'm just interested to see how many touches Melvin Gordon can get. Cards and Raiders should be a shootout, really good game. I'm excited for this one. The Cards look to recover, the Raiders look to recover. Two teams with absurdly high expectations. And I think even though Kyler Murray just signed a big deal, I think he has about 8 games before people really start like bitching about him hard and labeling him as a bust. And I feel the same way about Trevor Lawrence, although it wouldn't be as fair for him because he's not in as good of a situation. Regardless of what the Cards' record is, they need to be putting up like ridiculous offensive numbers. They should be shooting out every week like Texas Tech. I'm not really worried if I'm a Cardinals fan and they're shooting out and losing. If they're looking like horseshit like they did last week and losing, that's when I get concerned. Bears Packers, one of those matchups people ostentatiously pretend is like a great historic rivalry that is just not in a good spot and hasn't been in years. The Bears are a joke with no quarterback. The Packers are overrated and always get the calls, but they're going to monster mode the Bears. Should be unwatchably boring. Monday Night Football Titans Bills should be great, like an AFC divisional preview perhaps. Look for Derrick Henry to return to peak form. Love him, and look for the Bills offense to be like one of the most consistent and steady in football. Maybe not as explosive as the Chiefs, but those are my thoughts on the matchups. And let me just preview the fantasy matchups here as we go into blinding light there, like a fucking flashbang. So AB on the left, me on the right, and I've thankfully started this early enough where there's no spoilers really. Other than the Thursday night game, obviously. So when I look at this, some of the things that I'm thinking about, Aaron Jones will put up over a dozen because Chicago's terrible. Darrell better get the looks. If he doesn't, I pretty much auto lose again. I'm already not in a good spot. Jalen Hurts, he'll probably go off for 30. Although Wincy looked phenomenal last week. Yeah, 35. That's pretty fucking droopy. Najee, probably under 10. Jacobs, probably over 10 rather. Brown from Philly, I like him. I just said Hurts would drop 30. Obviously, the outcomes will be correlated. Sutton, wasn't a huge fan of what I saw from Denver, and I'm a little bit concerned about that pick. Had to start Shitter Brait because Herb Dirt, Kittle's hurt. Sort of a reach by me in retrospect, taking him in the fourth. Spencer's right again. When is he ever wrong? Kareem Hunt will either find the end zone or he won't, and that'll be the crux of the issue. He's playing the fucking Jets. I'm betting that he will. He'll probably outscore Singletary, who's playing a pretty good defense. Boswell, Pittsburgh kicker, terrible. Prater's playing for a potentially slumping team. Hate that. Rams and Chargers. Obviously, the Rams are going to get more than a point. AB beats me pretty easily, probably. Christian Boy versus Clap for. Weston takes it. 110 to 100. Lilly versus Jax. McCaffrey pops off big and Jackson wins. Spencer and fucking Cam. Herbert hurt, but he got a lot of points already on Thursday, and Cam will be fine. For this week, I mean, but he'll struggle in the future, although quarterback's super deep. You'll still never see him trade. That's the sick thing. Spencer wins. Yeah, I think Chubb does pretty well and Spencer wins. Ryan projected to win, but I think Seagouch will win. I think Pollard and Elliott are just going to be a black hole. Well, the thing about Ryan's team is like Cup and Hill can combine for 50, so like he always has that win condition, but I just think Seagouch has him beat. Burrow and Mixon are probably going to combine for fucking 50. Like they're going to run a train on Dallas's defense. Like Burrow was like really butthurt about losing last game, and he's just going to fucking embarrass the Cowboys. Expect Diggs to get burned super hard at least once. Advantage Seagouch. And then JP versus Ramhard. I think that JP's core goes off for like 60 and he wins again. So that was the TWIF. I know it was sort of late, but better late than never, Kappa. Hope you enjoyed.